Hello and welcome to a Warframe video. So in this video I wanted to cover a few things or issues or notes that I made while playing as Gara. So I made a video previously before her, before the big buffs and nerfs and stuff that happened with the latest update. I made a video about Gara's Mass Vitrify and its potential, and it was okay. I mean, it wasn't obviously the mass bit of when you were playing as Gara. She's a defensive Warframe. Playing against higher difficulties, obviously that made you kind of yeah. You wouldn't last that long because of her Vetrify not being that powerful enough. After her buff, I was a little bit like, it was a case of, will actually there be any difference to her at all? Anything? I mean, they only changed her fourth power to basically scale, based on the enemies that are trapped in it, and that doesn't actually. I didn't think that actually that made that huge of a difference, and after playing her for a little bit, it actually doesn't because every time whenever I'm using Gara specifically for her mass vitrify, I'm not actually trying to lure enemies to the center to block them so I can use mass vitrify on them. I'm using mass vitrify to keep them away from wherever I want them to be. And that's a problem considering that you can't scale your wall. Your wall doesn't scale unless you have people trapped inside, and thus making it kind of useless against ranged enemies because they're basically just shooting at you from a distance. You want to put a wall to protect something, and of course you'll put that wall while enemies are already at a distance away from you. So unless there is a melee fighter that you allow close enough to, I don't know, mass vitrify over him, that's not gonna be. It's Mass Vitrify isn't really going to scale for as much as it should have or it could have been when you're fighting against a lot of ranged enemies, including a big faction that you don't want to fight against when you're using Gara is the Corpus, because that nullifier will essentially just beast through any defenses that Gara can make, no matter what scaling or no scaling. If a nullifier touches your mass vitrify, then it's gone. It's just plain out gone. No scaling, no amount of scaling will change that. And sometimes the nullifiers, little drones on top of their heads that you can shoot at, they kind of glitch. And not only do they not, they kind of like, it's like they're not even there, like they disappeared or something. But also it's when you shoot them, the shield kind of covers them, and they don't actually get destroyed. It's like the shield, it's covering them on top, so they're almost impossible to destroy, even if you have a good aim with the proper in a particular angle, or sometimes even just because. So against the Corpus, I don't recommend using Gara at all. Grenier, now obviously you can use her, but like I said, the problem is with her mass vitrify is that you need to trap enemies in the middle to scale them, but the reality is you don't want to keep enemies in the middle where you're supposed to be defending whatever you're defending. You want to keep them away from that place, so it doesn't exactly help. Now, another big issue that I have noticed is that obviously by the time you use your mass vitrify, obviously you have to lure people, supposedly lure them in the middle. Of course, you still take damage from all those enemies. That's where Splinter Storm comes in handy with the defense bonus, with the defense reduction. The problem about Splinter Storm, however, is that it's very buggy for whatever reason. I have noticed. So when I use it, it'll, for whatever reason, before its timer runs out, it would just disappear for no reason, no matter what faction I'm fighting against. For whatever reason, it'll just disappear. Like its timer it'll basically just stop being used, even though I'm obviously using it. And on top of that, when I use it on my allies, if I've already used it before on them, it won't stack. The time won't reset. It'll almost seem like I never casted it completely. So it's Splinter Storm is obviously one of Gara's greatest abilities, a great buff, a great defense ability, but it's broken. It's actually very buggy and very broken. So it kind of ruins the experience of playing as Gara. Then we have, I mean, Spectre Rage is actually supposed to be the worst ability of her arsenal. by most, it's actually very useful because you can actually place it and it'll draw enemies into it or draw enemies to shoot at it. And once they're in the middle, you can just shoot at them. You can whale them like they're sitting ducks essentially, like kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. But like I said, the only problem is the nullifiers from the Corpus side, which obviously as soon as their bubble touches the Spectre Rage, it's gone. It's like it never existed. So even though Spectre Rage is definitely very useful against Infested, currently Gara is primarily useful against Infested. Against any other faction, she is kind of lacking, like I said, with her Mass Vitrify not being able to scale unless you have enemies in there. And I guess this kind of supposedly, because the primary use is not like Mass Vitrify is not, it's not kind of used like Frost's Snow Globe, where you just put it in there and then you just forget about it. It's a case of you actually place it. It's a wall that protects you. There is no timer. I have noticed that the Gara's wall doesn't actually have a timer. Mass Vitrify doesn't have a timer counting downwards, so that's actually pretty good. That means you can use some strength, maybe sacrifice some duration in order to put as much strength as possible. That way you don't have to worry about it. That way you can have as much strength as possible. Although, like everybody keeps saying, the strength is not enough. No matter, even with 200% strength, your Mass Vitrify will essentially melt from levels, I would say, about 40 plus. And I'm being optimistic, to be fair. And considering that you're facing against massive amounts of enemies who always keep shooting at you with a very, very good accuracy, yeah, that kind of is a problem. Spectre Rage can definitely lure some aggro away from you, and of course Splinter Storm can protect you, but like I said, Splinter Storm is kind of bugged. Like, I don't know why. At first, when I was fighting, I was basically doing a cut in order to, test things out, level her up and stuff, and I noticed that as I was using Splinter Storm, my Splinter Storm, even though it had still duration to go for it, it would just shut down. It would just stop working. And at first I thought that it was an Ancient Disruptor, because Ancient Disruptors do have the ability to disrupt your powers. I mean, isn't that why they're called Ancient Disruptors? So at first I thought that was the case, but it happened to it happened to other locations as well. Literally, I would use my Splinter Storm, and for whatever reason, after a few seconds, it would just shut down, like I never actually activated it, or like it. I don't know what is going on with the thing. It's like it just shuts down on its own for whatever reason, and every time, like I said, like if I were to use it on an ally, sometimes when I try to use it again to refresh it, it won't actually, it doesn't refresh the timer of it being there, and it just disappears. And of course, so I mean, it refreshes the Splinter Storm that you have on yourself, but it doesn't refresh the Splinter Storm on your allies. It still counts down like like it normally would, like the previous one. It doesn't refresh basically. So currently, Gara, I don't know if it's just something. Is it a game mechanic that I'm missing? Is there a different way to play as Gara? I mean, I know Mass Vitrify is supposed to be kind of like a, I don't know, like the way I see it, the last ability where you use your Shatter Lash on it to basically make it explode is when it's when you're being overwhelmed, and when it's starting to being taken damage and you want to replace it, you can use that to basically replace it with style or deal damage before it. But the idea of a defender is to essentially put a defense on an object and then just leave it there. And I don't know, for whatever reason I can seem to see for me currently Gara seems to be a little bit broken, both for her Splinter Storm, which kind of like I said, it shuts down on its own without actually having any timer, and I have also used it, like I've noticed this with every faction as well, so it's not like there's a specific enemy that's canceling my ability or something. It's actually happened to me with every faction. Spectre Rage is actually currently her only functional ability, and it actually works very nicely to deal to essentially to keep enemies occupied. It's pretty much her only useful ability currently. Shadow Lash, I don't really ever use it because its swing is very, very slow. By the time you actually use it, enemies have already like dealt their damage on me, so it's not exactly that useful. And the shooting thing, it's, you know, just very basic. It's almost like Volt's ability, except it lacks the crowd controlling capabilities that Volt's first power does. And last but not least is her Mass Vitrify, which the scaling thing that they actually added kind of doesn't exactly help its health because you're trying to avoid whatever is in the center that you're trying to protect from taking damage. That doesn't help exactly because you'll have to lure enemies there, and obviously they're not going to just sit there like, oh, look at this, how about I go straight to the middle, right, where the enemy wants me. No, they're going to actually be shooting at you. Some of them will stop to shoot at you while others will, you know. But yeah, the way I see it right now is Gara is a little bit broken. She seems to her abilities are, I don't know if it's something that I'm missing or if she actually is broken, about as broken as I see her to be. So yeah, this is my perspective on Gara, and yeah, let me know what you think. If you think that, I don't know, if have you even played as Gara? So yeah, let me know what you thought in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay cool, and I'll see you later.